In a recent New York Times column, Maureen Dell describes Donald Trump as an American monster, which he is. Now, this is an entirely reasonable view, because American society is mirrored in such a state of malignant normality that somehow this fucking monster has tens of millions of sycophantic inbreds who worship him, and they worship his greed, criminality, and cruelty. Now, Dell contrasts, she compares Trump to the monster of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is kind of an insult to Frankenstein, but it begins with an elegance of mind and sweetness of temperament. And this is reading from Goeth's The Sorrows of Young Werther, and a gathering firewood for a poor family. But then the create, but then Victor Frankenstein's creator abandons and rejects him, refusing to make him a mate. Now, now the creature finds no one who does not recoil in fear and disgust from his stitched together appearance, his yellow skin and eyes and black lips. And now embittered, he seeks revenge on his creator and the world. Now everywhere I see bliss, from which alone I am irrevocably excluded. He laments. I was benevolent and good, and misery made me a friend. Now, before he disappears into the Arctic at the end of the book, he muses that once he had high thoughts of honor, until his frightful catalog of malignant deeds piled up. Now, Mary Shelley's monster, unlike ours, has self-awareness and a reason to wreak havoc. He knows how to feel guilty and when to leave the stage. Our monster's malignity stems from pure narcissistic psychopathy, and he refuses to leave the stage or cease his vile mendacity. Now, Dowd surmises that it never occurred to Donald Trump that a squatter or president openly plotting a seditious coup would be a debilitating, corrosive thing for the country. It was just another way for the Emperor of Chaos to burnish his title. Now, the House January 6th Committee's first primetime hearing played out as a horror story with the predatory Proud Boys and a monster at its center that even Mary Shelley could have appreciated. Now, in his dystopian inaugural Klan speech, Trump had promised to end American carnage. Instead, he delivered it. Now he needs to be held accountable for his attempted coup, and not just in the court of public opinion. Now, but who created this fucking monster? Donald Trump was not built by a deranged scientist in a secret lab. He's not an orphan. He did not emerge out of nowhere. He was the almost inevitable result of a decades-long assault by the conservative movement aimed at ending American democracy, especially multiracial, and replacing it with the pseudo-democratic authoritarian state, perhaps organized under the political system theorist Sheldon Wolin described as inverted totalitarianism. Now, as part of that long-term assault, most of the historic victories of the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, the gay rights movement, the labor and environmental movement, and other struggles for human dignity and a more just society are being rolled back. Now, if this succeeds, America's already threadbare social safety net will be virtually eliminated. The white Christian fascists and corporate plutocrats will forge a ruling coalition with the near total dominion over American life and society. The separation of church and state, along with the guarantee of free speech and most of the Bill of Rights, will disappear. Now, there is no longer a normal or traditional version of the Republican Party for so-called conservatives to return to. Now, even these conservatives who have disavowed or denounced the Trump movement are implicated in his rise, and they are like the political Dr. Frankensteins, horrified by what they have created, but are unable to kill that. Now, over the course of decades, they painstakingly built this monster and created the blueprint for American fascism. As Wajahat Ali wrote this week in the Daily Beast, some of Trump's most prominent enablers are now trying to distance themselves from the ongoing, concentrated right-wing effort to overturn the 2020 election. Even though most of these ex-Trumpers will fail in their careers, as is often the case in Washington, D.C., it's important for the rest of us to recognize them as utterly complicit actors who deserve to wear that maggot hat on their heads until the end of time. If you believe that there is a team normal in the modern GOP, then you'll also probably believe that fewer doors and arming teachers will reduce the mass shootings, which it won't. Banning books will save your children from being transgender, which it won't. And climate change is a hoax created by China, which it wasn't. Now, either way, You're not acknowledging that the GOP is now a weaponized cult that no longer produces rational Republicans, but instead it caters to the festering, fevered paranoid swamp of dangerous conspiracy theories, and white supremacist ideologies. Now, this persistent right-wing disinformation has now radicalized its base, in which many members believe violence is necessary to take back their country, which it's not. Now, the reality is that Team Normal and Team Crazy both play for the GOP, and they wear the same uniforms and, for now, worship a fake golden calf idol known as Trump. Ultimately, Donald Trump is not some type of monstrous other or outsider. He was not conjured up in some other dimension ruled by Lovecraftian demons, and only to descend on America out of ether to sow destruction, chaos, misery, and death. In reality, Donald Trump is a man, a symbol, and a failed political leader, and everything he embodies is the product of our society, which is driven by extreme social inequality, consumerism and greed, unfulfilled dreams, widespread alienation and loneliness, anti-intellectualism, racism, and white supremacy, the cult of the spectacle, our fetish for violence, and a range of related antisocial and anti-human values and tendencies. Now, in a recent essay for Sheer Post that was republished at Salon, Chris Hedges offers a powerful diagnosis of our corrupt and failing American political system, arguing that the House January 6 committee will do nothing to correct this. The two established wings of the oligarchy, the old Republican Party represented by politicians such as Liz Cheney, which is one of two Republicans on the committee, and the Bush family, are now united with the Democratic Party elite into one ruling political entity. The ruling parties were already in a lockstep for decades on the major issues, including war, trade deals, austerity, the militarization of police, prisons, government surveillance, and assaults on civil liberties. They have worked in a tandem to pervert and destroy democratic institutions on behalf of the rich and corporations, and they desperately work together now to stave off the revolt by enraged and betrayed white working men and women who support Donald Trump on the far right. Now, there are other systemic failures as well. America's mainstream news media, through both habit and laziness, have approached Donald Trump and American politics more generally as a running narrative of great men, and more recently great women, singular figures who are the main characters in an ongoing drama, largely independent of history, culture, or economic reality. Now, this partly explains the media's obsession with polling and public opinion, the addiction to horse race coverage, and the drive to identify winners and losers on a daily fucking basis. Now, of course, the mainstream media is also driven by profit, and it's compelled to shape the news so as to not offend advertisers or to alienate the political establishment and other social and cultural elites. Now, the media practitioners are trained to avoid moral language when describing domestic politics, although they routinely use such language when discussing foreign affairs, and especially America's official enemies. The result is that most mainstream American political journalism remains an exercise in stenography and superficial commentary, which is almost always bending the knee to such totems as moderation, normal politics, fairness, and balance. And concepts like these were never likely to be helpful or transparent, and they are now totally inadequate to the task of confronting America's democracy crisis. Now, many people in the media still refuse to see the Trump movement and the modern Republican Party as destructive revolutionary forces, but that's only the inbreeding rednecks that support Trump anyway that don't see that, rather than as a traditional political movement with an investment in the existing system. At this point, the media's willful or compulsive refusal to comprehend the nature of the threat has become a pathology. Now, journalists at mainstream outlets would benefit greatly from reading The Authoritarian Playbook, a media guide, which is a new report from the nonpartisan nonprofit group called Protect Democracy, and it offers this following advice from the book. To the extent that the Authoritarian Playbook has a central theme, it is that democratic erosion is a process of power concentration and consolidation. While all political actors seek to accumulate power, authoritarians uniquely seek to entrench that power and protect it from external checks. Experts generally agree that democracies don't tend to die at the hands of individuals alone, but rather contemporary attacks on democracy only succeed when they are coordinated, systemic, and undertaken by broad parties of movements. Now, if Donald Trump, the American monster, is somehow banished from American political life, whether it be through criminal prosecution, just his advancing age, or some other force, another such monster will rapidly appear, In fact, Ron DeSantis and other leading Republican fascists are eagerly waiting for Trump to lead the stage, and could well turn out to be more competent and more effective than him. Trumpism is a hydra-headed movement that's no longer dependent on Trump as an individual. Chop off one of its heads and another will grow. The only long-term solution is to drain the swamp that birthed that monster. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just as little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.